Hello YouTube, it's Michael Bruce Gallagher, the media preacher, back with another video. And today we are looking at my fake Beatles mono box set. This video is inspired by another YouTuber, James Griffiths, also known as Beatle James, who showed us his fake stereo version a few months ago. And I decided to do a video in response to that because I've got a fake version of the mono box set to show you all. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I came to be in possession of this item as the video progresses. But in terms of James, I would implore you to go over to his channel, watch some of his videos and subscribe to him because he's very, very knowledgeable about music. He knows an awful lot about the albums that he reviews, and his reviews are absolutely fantastic and very, very, very detailed. I also want to thank everybody who's been subscribing to this channel. And if you enjoy this video and haven't already subscribed, then I invite you to do that, please, because it's massively encouraging for me to see those subscription numbers going up slowly but surely. Now, to move on to the box set, I bought my version of the stereo box set when it first came out. I bought this from HMV on, I think, the day after it was released. I bought it immediately because I had been waiting for a Beatles box set for such a long time. As you know, Parlophone released the Beatles stuff on CD back in about 1987, and then they'd never released a remastered version. In the mid-2000s, it was announced that at Abbey Road they would be remastering all of the albums that were released by the Beatles, that the albums would all be released in stereo, which was a huge thing because I'd wanted to hear the stereo versions of the early albums for a very long time. My dad had the early albums Please Please Me, With the Beatles, Hard Day's Night on vinyl, and then he upgraded to the CD versions when they came out in 1987. But those versions were only ever released as mono discs. I think because the songs were really made to be in mono originally. I've seen a number of documentaries where George Martin and the Beatles have talked about the mixing process and how they'd take days and days over the mono disc and then spend just a few hours bashing the disc into stereo. I had heard some of the stereo versions of the songs, most notably on the Red album that I had on vinyl, and some of the songs from those early albums appear on that in stereo. And I really enjoyed the stereo mixes. They were a little bit, sometimes instruments on one side, like a bass guitar for instance, inappropriately panned too heavily, or a vocal inappropriately panned. But I thought they were really interesting mixes, and I just wanted to hear the stereo mixes of a lot of those songs. So when this box set was announced, it was also announced that they would be releasing a mono box set. This set on its own, it's very heavy, this set, it's a great set, I recommend it to anybody, was about £200 from HMV when I bought it. I think it is still available, it hasn't completely sold out, but it's much, much harder to come by. Just to show you this set quickly, it opens up, it's got almost like a magnetic strip here that makes it clamp down. And then the discs are all housed in this beautiful compartment, and they are absolutely, fantastically reproduced. They're an improvement, I think, actually, on the original album sleeves, but they're done as if they're original album sleeves. A lot of them open out like this, beautiful pictures, inlays, the booklets that come with them are beautifully printed. They feel absolutely fantastic. They're obviously quality. This is a quality item. And when I put the stereo discs in and listen to these early albums, especially A Hard Day's Night, because it's my dad's favourite and so will always have a special place with me also. And when I heard these albums in stereo for the first time, I was just absolutely blown away by the quality of the remastering and the care that had been put into producing the Beatles catalogue properly and presenting it in such a beautiful box set. But as I say, because this box set was so expensive, I certainly couldn't have afforded to buy the mono counterpart at the same time that I bought this. And so when it came time to buy the remastered box sets, I absolutely went for the stereo version. And I'm glad I did because it's a box set that I love. I think it sounds great. I'd recommend this, all the individual discs, to anybody that's thinking about buying them. To anybody that loves the Beatles, you should own these 2009 remasters because they really do the Beatles justice. And I've played these discs on my stereo system. I also put them into iTunes before the Beatles were available on iTunes, and I've listened to them in the car and on my iPod when I've been on holiday. I don't tend to use my iPod too much at home because I like to use my stereo system and either vinyl records or CD. But anyway, I got into mixing and I started to recognise the value of a good mono mix, because I realised when I was mixing songs for myself and for others that if I could get the mono mix sounding good, then the stereo mix would sound even better than it had done before. But sometimes I could fold the stereo mix down into a mono mix and all of a sudden I couldn't hear the instruments as well or as clearly as I could. And the great thing about the Beatles in mono, as I say, is that George Martin, the Beatles and the engineers spent days getting these mixes absolutely perfect. So moving on to the mono box set. I've been using my stereo box set for a long time. I'm interested in the mono mixes, and on eBay about 18 months ago I see an advert for the Beatles in mono box set, and it was advertised at being sold for just over £30. Now this is a classic example of when something sounds too good to be true. It probably is, but having seen the advert I was tempted because of the price, really, and I thought, well, £35, I can justify spending that on the mono box set. And so I contacted the seller and I asked him, is the box set legitimate? If I'm spending £35, am I getting the real deal? And he wrote back to me in perfect English, he was from China, assuring me that the box set was perfect. And so I paid the money, and a few weeks later this box set arrived at my house. It came in cellophane. Originally it had this inlay sheet on the side of it, and it was all wrapped up in cellophane, just like this one had. I looked at it and I saw that side and I thought, wow, this is fantastic. And I started to open it and I took this sheet away, and immediately, and this is the giveaway on the pirated box sets, there are quite a few versions of it on YouTube, the apple didn't look too right. When I looked at it against the apple print on the stereo box set, this apple was far darker. And it was a sign of things to come, I'm afraid, because then when I opened the box set up, I could see immediately that it wasn't right. The first album I pulled out, of course, was Please Please Me. And when I looked at the printing on this, it's slightly blurred. It's far too dark. The blurring on the back of the album is very obvious. And at that point, I knew that I had been duped. But nevertheless, I thought, well, let's look at the rest of the albums and see how bad they actually are. With the Beatles I pulled out, again, I immediately knew it was fake, because as soon as I looked at it, the parlophone sign was off centre and it was all wonky. Even though these are produced actually in quite nice card, sort of almost photo paper type cards, they're not the same quality as the beautiful sort of matte finishes that you've got on the stereo box set. As I delved further into the box set, more and more horrors start to confront me. I looked at Beatles for Sale, and the printing on this is completely wrong. It's sort of blurred, it's slightly smudged, it's blocky in places, and the colours are all wrong. Which is a real shame, because actually whoever has produced this box set has gone to quite a lot of trouble, because the albums all open out in a very similar way to the stereo box set. You've got all of the inlay cards. When Beatle James was showing his box set, he had all kinds of spelling mistakes on his covers. I don't have any spelling mistakes or anything like that on these. And with an album like, for instance, Magical Mystery Tour, they've gone to the trouble of even producing the booklet in full. And I've got the whole booklet here, and it's the same booklet as in the stereo box set, but again, the colours are all wrong. But in some respects, it's strange, because another example of that is the White Album. The White Album is the worst of all of the albums, because there's no embossing, or it should say the Beatles there, it's just plain white cover on the front and back. But the white cover, I don't know if you can see, is not straight. And so it's just like photo paper that hasn't been printed on. And then as you open it up inside, you do have the usual, but the thing's not even properly stuck together. It's all sort of falling apart. So really sloppy printing, but then for some reason the manufacturers of this have gone to the trouble of recreating the poster and all of the postcards, albeit on slightly flimsy, sort of cheap paper. But it's really strange that in some respects, and that's the dichotomy of this box set, that parts of it are really, really well done, and then they've cheaped out on the printing. I mean, the Magical Mystery Tour would be a fantastic edition because it's got all of the booklet and everything, save for the quality of the printing. The White Album's terrible, Beatles for Sale's terrible, Rubber Soul is terrible. Hard Day's Night is not too bad in terms of its presentation, but the parlophone sign at the top isn't properly printed. What I'm trying to say in short is that I could tell from a mile off, just perusing the discs, that this box set was not right. I had been duped out of £35 essentially. When I looked at the CDs, they all came in these sort of strange plastic bags. I don't know if the real box set has these plastic bags. Anybody that's got the real box set, perhaps leave me a comment and let me know. But the CDs are quite well printed in terms of the actual discs, and they're all on proper silverback discs. So again, it goes to the strange dichotomy that parts of this are really well done and care's been taken, and parts of it absolutely appalling. But I thought to myself, I've spent £35, I've got something at least to put on my shelf next to my stereo box set. I wonder what the quality of the discs is like. And this is where the box set really fell down and really badly disappointed me, if I'm going to be honest. Because I listened to the stereo box set through a Marantz standalone CD player and an Onkyo amplifier. I've played and played and played it, and I know how the recordings sound. I put the mono box set into the same system, and immediately I realised that the sound quality of the CDs was very poor. The CDs don't have the right low end, they don't have the right top end, they don't sound absolutely awful, but if you're listening to them through a proper stereo system, you can hear that these are not CD quality files, and it really stands out a mile off. It's a real shame because I wanted to hear these in good quality, CD quality, on my big stereo system. But I think the only way I'll be able to hear the mono box set like that is by spending over £100 on the real thing, which of course would be perfect, and as perfect as my stereo box set is. But I can't really recommend these for the audio quality at all. So I think the moral of the story is this: if you see something that's too good to be true, it probably is. If you see a Beatles mono box set on eBay and it's going for about £30 from China, in all likelihood, even if you have an assurance from the seller that it's real, it's probably not going to be real at that price, and you're probably going to end up with something similar to the box set I have. But if you're just casually wanting to hear the mono box set, which I suppose in many respects I did, then these CDs will allow you to hear the mono mixes. I presume that this box set was mastered from some poor quality MP3s, because the sound quality, as I say, is just not up to the spec you would expect from a 16-bit compact disc, period. So anyway, that's my Beatles in mono box set, that's my Beatles in stereo box set, that's the one I listen to. This is the one that really I've got purely as decoration on my shelf, but the two things do look pretty good together when they're sort of stacked up on the shelf. Although I have to accept one of the other problems with this box set, I haven't mentioned this, is the in mono. The typeface doesn't look quite right for the in mono words, which I think is another giveaway that this set is not the real deal. But nevertheless, I have got the real deal in the stereo box set, and this box set sits very, very nicely with it on my shelf, and actually, on the whole, I'm pretty happy with it, because if I want to listen to the discs, I'm going to go to the stereo versions. But it's a bit of fun, it wasn't too expensive, and I just wanted to show it to everybody on the channel so they can see my mono box set. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did enjoy it, please subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing more music reviews in the next few months coming up, as well as some movie reviews hopefully. So this is Michael B. Gallagher, the Media Preacher. Until next time, keep on preaching.